This is CBC Vancouver News.
It's dark, it's wet, it's hard to see.
Winter weather, travel, chaos. Snow, wind, and cold lead to crashes across the south coast, shut down a bridge, and leave thousands of people without power.
It seems like we lose the fact that it's for people from Asia.
I do not feel good. Yeah, because when the different banks is better for the society.
Big bank buy. RBC will take over the Canadian arm of HSBC. How do BC customers feel?
Extinction is a very chilling word. Once something is gone, it is gone forever.
And why more than 2,000 wild species are at risk of getting wiped out in Canada. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. You may have been stuck in it. You may still be in it. Parts of the Lower Mainland in travel chaos tonight after snow, wind, and cold blew across our region. It closed the Alex Fraser Bridge completely for several hours and may have led to a plane going off a taxiway at YVR. Amid it all, people have been stranded for hours. This was the mess on the Alex Fraser Bridge earlier tonight. Semi-trucks, buses, cars, all stuck or struggling to get traction as salters and plows try to keep up. Drive BC announced the span was shut down by numerous crashes just after 8 p.m., snarling traffic on roads to and from the span. As of now, Drive BC says the northbound right and left lanes are open, but all southbound lanes are still closed. Some people say they've been stuck since before 4 p.m., and they're worried they might run out of gas, food, or electricity.
I think there's one lane that's supposedly open, but I've heard several fire trucks go by, a few ambulances. So I don't know, it's dark, it's wet, it's hard to see.
Main Road Contracting for an update. We haven't yet heard back yet. Meanwhile, Drive BC also reporting the southbound lanes leading to the Massey Tunnel are closed by a crash south of Steveston. So getting out of Richmond is proving beyond frustrating tonight.
Well, it looks like this aircraft was coming in, took too wide of a turn, and drove right off of the taxiway into the ground.
From the roads to the runways, another big transportation problem tonight, this time at YVR. The airport says an EVA flight listed as coming in from Taipei left a taxiway on its way to the gate after it landed around 7 p.m. and became stuck in the grass, as you can see, near the north runway. There are no reports of injuries, but YVR says that north runway is closed to arrivals. That could delay other flights. Crews have been working to move passengers to terminals using buses. It's not clear, we should say, if the snowy weather played a role in the plane going into the grass. We have contacted EVA for more information, but again, have yet to hear back. And as of last check, BC Hydro reporting the winter weather has knocked out power to almost 40,000 people from the Lower Mainland to the northern and southern Vancouver Islands. Crews are busy working to restore electricity. Meanwhile, plenty of buses have been delayed and diverted. Earlier today, TransLink announced what it was doing to keep the trolleys and trains moving.
We're running special trucks to run de-icer fluid on the trolley wires. So that's very important to keep the trolley wires from building up with ice. Tonight, we're going to be running special trains that spray de-icer fluid on the power rail to keep ice from building up on the power rail as well. And another thing we're doing is we're replacing many 60-foot articulated buses with 40-foot buses, as 40-foot buses are more agile in the snow. We're going to be communicating with the customers.
On the Sunshine Coast, meanwhile, people reported seeing cars slide hundreds of feet down slippery streets. Well, on Bowen Island, one man said he had to park his truck on an icy road and trudge 5 kilometers home. Our Kuljit Kaila will have your BC-wide weather forecast and what we are expecting next later in the show. It looks like trouble for some of Canada's wild things. A new report from UBC on our country's biodiversity warns thousands of species are at high risk of being wiped out. As Susanna De Silva explains, the biggest blow could be to some of our smallest creatures.
It's just not in Canada anymore.
In little boxes and in little envelopes
On Haida Gwaii, we had a rare species.
are samples of the most threatened creatures in the country.
It's just found on this one cliff face.
Yeah.
And
Scientists at UBC's Biodiversity Museum have catalogued around 2 million specimens, including many of the 80,000 species found in Canada. A new report says many of them are under threat.
Extinction is a very chilling word. Once something is gone, it is gone forever.
Every 5 years, Canada tries to add to its catalogue of species and see how they're doing. Researchers don't have enough information about many, but those they do know about, the news isn't good.
1 in 5 species are at risk of extinction in Canada, which points to the urgent need for action.
And while larger animals like whales or marmots garner the most attention, the vast majority of species threatened are either insects, plants, mosses, and lichen.
So they're disproportionately affected by human activities based on what we're seeing in this report.
Biologist Toby Shperbilla specializes in lichen.
There are flying squirrels, which use it for nesting material, and a lot of birds. If you've ever seen a hummingbird nest, hummingbirds use it for nesting material, and it's very, very well integrated into the ecosystem.
A point scientists at UBC hope their museum can help people understand.
We don't really have enough understanding to say, well, we can afford to lose 5%, 10%, 15%. At some point, the whole system collapses, and we don't know enough to even know where that point is.
The federal government has committed to protecting 30% of Canada's lands and oceans by the next decade. They're halfway there right now, but scientists are worried by then more species in Canada will only be found in museums like this. Susanna Da Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
For more than 20 years, a mountain of scrap vehicle tires has been piled up on a remote island off the coast of the Sunshine Coast's Nelson Island. But that has finally changed. Take a look. Staff and volunteers with the Ocean Legacy Foundation and Let's Talk Trash program moved 2,409 tires off the island over the course of 2 days last month. Tires were passed down a human chain to the waiting barge because the sloped rocky shore couldn't accommodate machinery. They were then transported to a recycling facility in Delta. Organizers say permission to move them was only recently granted.
The reason why these tires have been sitting on that island for so long, they've been reported by many different people, but it's outside of everyone's sort of jurisdiction to do the cleanup. But yeah, trying to still get in touch with some of those like old timer Nelson Island folk to see if they have any stories about the origins of how the tires came there.
The cleanup was part of a larger initiative that supports marine shoreline cleanup and protection of coastal BC communities. The annual BC Cabinet and First Nations Leaders Gathering kicked off today, and with more than 1,000 people registered to attend, it marks the largest gathering since its inception 7 years ago.
I view this gathering as a genuine opportunity for all of us within government, outside of government, that have come here to participate in this very, very important exchange.
During the two-day event, Premier David Eby and provincial cabinet ministers will meet with First Nations leaders to discuss community development, build government-to-government relationships, and continue working toward meaningful reconciliation. Well, as we told you last night, Surrey City Council has approved its latest step in trying to keep the RCMP as its city police force. But as Mira Baines reports, concerns are ramping up over staffing levels and what it will cost.
Show us the numbers. That's the message from the founder of a grassroots group that called for the creation of the Surrey Police Service as the new city council in Surrey moves to keep the RCMP.
Right now, they will only present the numbers according to RCMP, which is not transparent, I think.
Wake Up Surrey had called for a city police force to deal with crime and gang activity in Surrey. During the recent civic election campaign, newly elected Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke claimed the police force would cost taxpayers $520 million over the next 4 years.
But now there's no mention of a so-called saving. Where it's gone? People want to know because they voted on this platform.
Now experts, including former RCMP Deputy Commissioner Peter German, who wrote a review into money laundering in BC, have been tasked to come up with a final detailed report into maintaining the RCMP in Surrey. That move was approved by City Council last night.
And we are proud to serve the City of Surrey, and we look forward to serving for some time to come.
There are questions over how they'll be able to maintain police staffing levels. Surrey RCMP's top cop, Assistant Commissioner Brian Edwards, says SPS still needs hundreds of officers to take over, but is confident he can meet RCMP staffing challenges and fully police the city. The deadline is quickly approaching, with approval by December 12th, so that it can be in Solicitor General Mike Farnworth's hands 3 days later.
I'll be talking to both the Premier and to the Solicitor General over the coming weeks to let them know where we're at with the progress on this.
The Surrey Police Union says it will also be sending a report to the province. The union points out 7 out of 14 shifts this week were below minimum RCMP staffing levels.
We really need to look at this from both sides, and the residents deserve the facts.
This criminologist says it's time for the province to end the fight over policing.
I think it needs to be addressed promptly and decisively, one way or the other, by the province, and to just stop the bickering.
Former Surrey Mayor Doug McCallum issued a statement saying it's unfair for only the RCMP to be invited to speak to council. Locke says she'll be meeting with the Surrey Police Board tomorrow. It's unclear when the province will make its decision. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
Also an update to our story from last night. The Vancouver School Board voting to bring back the school liaison officer program.
All those in favor of this motion? Trustee Zhang, Trustee Chin, Trustee Friedcote, Trustee Richardson, Trustee Young. Those opposed? Trustee Ma, Trustee Reddy, Trustee Chen Pedley, Trustee Fraser. The motion carries.
Motion passed last night 5-4, asks for the reinstatement of the program in Vancouver schools by next September. It was ended last year amid concerns about the impact police presence in school would have on students' mental and physical well-being, especially students of color. Mayor Ken Sim and his party, the ABC, ran on a platform to bring the cops back.
The Police Act governs all police in schools and elsewhere. It will invite people with guns into our schools, people over which the Vancouver School Board has no oversight.
It is this preventative, proactive approach to crime prevention that become a primary deterrent in youth criminality.
I do think that we would benefit from further discussion with students across the district before the board formally votes on this motion, because it is the students who will be affected, albeit the presence or absence of this program.
Before the vote, BC's Human Rights Commissioner called for school liaison officers to be ended across the province. She said Indigenous, Black, and other marginalized students, as well as their parents, guardians, and communities, have raised serious concerns about the harm harm caused by having officers in schools. Today, some parents spoke out against the decision.
The first time it was taken out, it was a long fight and a lot of people that were Indigenous and minority didn't want the SLOW program in the schools anymore because of the emotional effects it has. And we felt it was a success. And now it just feels like we're taking like 10 steps backwards in community.
While school liaison officers have acted as sports coaches, youth counselors, and substance use educators, the Human Rights Commissioner says schools should fund educators to take on those roles. The school trustees voting in favor of bringing back the program say many students, parents, and educators have called for its return. To other news now, the Independent Investigations Office is looking into a police shooting in Gastown last night that sent one man to hospital. Transit Police and Vancouver Police arrived at Cambie in West Cordova just after several people reported a man attacking strangers and threatening people with a weapon. During the fight, a Transit Police officer shot a 23-year-old man. He was sent to hospital and remains in custody. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. A semi-truck driver has had his big rig impounded after Mounties say they caught him with several open liquor bottles. Take a look. A photo shared on Facebook shows several bottles of vodka, all of varying sizes, displayed on top of a Surrey RCMP cruiser. Police write that the driver was given 90-day immediate roadside prohibition and the vehicle impounded for a month. Vancouver City Council started digging into its 2023 budget today. Council heard from staff about the $1.9 billion draft plan for next year, along with different spending priorities for various departments. In the last decade, property taxes have climbed upwards in the city. Mayor Ken Sim and many of the new councillors have said reducing that rise is a priority. At this point, though, Sim says it's too early to promise that next year's number will be below 5%.
We ran on a platform that public safety was, a primary concern for us. So we will be making significant investments into public safety, but it's still way too early to look at. Until we have clarity as to what's going on in every single line item. We can't make that determination yet.
We often want to go places where we feel comfortable, where we feel we trust the brand.
One of Canada's biggest banks is buying HSBC. What does that mean for HSBC's international clientele, though? We'll have that story after this. Thank you for joining us on our commercial-free live stream tonight. It is quite a night. The Wolastoqey First Nation in New Brunswick has opened a children's language immersion school. The school developed a collection of books and a vocabulary app to make up for the limited available resources, and it recently opened its doors to the public. Take a look.
Our language is so important because if we don't use our language, if you don't use anything, it's going to go away. I had a lot of these kids here. I almost burst out crying sometimes when the teachers are teaching them, and I would sit over there in my chair, and then they ask me a few times, what word is this, what word is that? And then when you hear the children, they don't even have to think about the word, they're already saying it. We ask them to say, Wolastoqey right off the bat, and there's no hesitation at all with the children, no matter what they do. In the language, no hesitation. Because they have it in here already. They have it in there already. It's beautiful.
A lot of people would say why they don't do immersion is because there's not enough resources, there's not enough teachers, there's not enough fluent speakers. So these were all kind of the naysaying things that people would talk about. So we thought, well, if we could start tackling some of those issues, then we can maybe make this happen. So the Language Conservancy helped us to get the resources that we needed for our immersion program. We know that reading stories and books and repetitiveness with children is one of the main ways to teaching language. That's how we learn to speak whatever language we're speaking now is the English, right? And so we were taught stories, we were taught to sing, we were taught various methods of learning the language. So that's how language is taught. And so if you don't have the resources to like books and to expose children to these various ways of learning, then it makes it a little bit more challenging and a little less fun for them. So I think it'll just make it more fun for the kids to engage in these storytelling books and the resources that we have. A lot of our young people who are teachers are just learning the language themselves, so we have to level them up, and so that they are able to teach like 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, which they are very capable of doing at this point. And with kids learning in an immersive environment, we want them to feel comfortable and safe here. So we let them, if they want to speak to us in English, they can do that, but we always encourage the language. We'll give them back the language that they need to converse with us. So it's like, for instance, like when they go wash their hands, we sing a song with them, Gisiptinans, Dasakwe Nagwe, Sida Dama Wiwanu. So that's a way of learning that is always going to be ingrained in their brain through song, right? And they're learning vocabulary as well.
It's the biggest domestic bank merger in Canadian history. The Royal Bank of Canada is buying the Canadian arm of HSBC for $13.5 billion in cash. And as the CBC's Peggy Lamb tells us, some BC customers have concerns about that big deal.
Eileen Fong is a decades-long customer with HSBC. She's from Hong Kong and isn't surprised by the news.
Good, it's bought by a local bank, a big one. But on the other hand, it seems like we lose the fact that it's for people from Asia.
Others are questioning the purchase.
I do not feel good. Yeah, because when the different banks is better for the society.
Alexandra Ayala says she and her mom chose HSBC because they operate in her home country, Mexico.
It's great because I can have my money from Mexico and here, and I don't have any more problem. No problem here.
But RBC isn't in Mexico, and Ayala says she's not sure what she'll do if they merge. In 1986, the Hong Kong Bank of Canada bought the Bank of BC, joining into what's now known as HSBC. In Canada, HSBC has 130 branches, 4,300 employees, and $134 billion in assets. Finance journalist Rabina Ahmed Haq says it really is an international brand.
You would see in Asia, you would see in Africa, you would see throughout Europe, you would see, of course, here in North America. And so when we do our banking, as you know, someone who talks about personal finance day in and day out, we often want to go places where we feel comfortable, where we feel we trust the brand.
The Royal Bank of Canada says the deal isn't about what HSBC has now, but what its client base can offer in the future. Their CEO says the acquisition gives RBC access to a new generation of immigrants, which means growth. But Ahmed Haq says taking on that international brand will mean work for RBC.
Because maybe people may not recognize RBC in the same way they recognize HSBC.
The deal is expected to close next year pending shareholder approval. It also needs the go-ahead from regulatory bodies like the Competition Bureau. Peggy Lam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Tonight, FIFA is investigating the game that eliminated Canada from the World Cup. But as Thomas Daigle explains, the issue is not what happened on the pitch, but in the stands.
Goalkeeper Milan Borjan didn't want to make a fuss, but now Canada's Soccer Association is picking a fight for him. All because of these Team Croatia fans, troublemakers sitting behind Borjan during Canada's match, taunting him using a word for pro-Nazi fascist.
We're like, man, they're yelling stuff at him, we can't understand it, but they're on Borjan all game.
But once I realized and someone educated me about what this was about, I was pretty shocked.
Some even got a hold of Borjan's cell phone number, inundating him with 2,500 insult-filled texts. And then there's this flag, brought to the stadium by Croatia supporters to target Borjan personally, with the logo of tractor maker John Deere. A vile attack in reference to Borjan's Serbian roots in a region of Croatia. Amid war in the 90s, his family fled like many others, some using tractors to get away.
He kind of educated us on it a little bit before the game. We kind of knew what he was going to go through in that game, and of course we told him we're behind you.
Now FIFA says it's launched a disciplinary case against Croatia's Soccer Federation over the behavior of its fans.
And we call for the fans and every individual to not to behave in that manner.
Serbian soccer officials are also having to answer to FIFA after this locker room picture surfaced showing a map of Serbia annexing independent Kosovo. A reminder of the deep historical tensions in the Balkans, with Canada's goalkeeper just the latest target. Borjan staying silent since Canada Soccer launched its complaint.
Croatia's Soccer Federation could face a fine over the incident. FIFA's disciplinary committee hasn't said how long it might take to issue a ruling. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Salal, Qatar.
There's a live shot of a desolate and wet and snowy Georgia street. Amazingly, some people's commutes are still not over tonight. Travel chaos, especially in Richmond. Kuljit Kaila will have your BC weather forecast after this.
There's nothing like the first snow of the season to test your winter driving skills. Most people don't know how to handle the stuff. A few millimeters and there's a traffic jam. All you have to do is think of it as a sport, like ice skating. are many degrees of difficulty depending on the maneuver. But above all, you have to watch out for the boards and other obstacles. Perhaps toughest for skaters is the doubles competition. It's important to have a partner with the same height, weight, and strength. While at rinkside, it's always enjoyable to listen to the crowd express its appreciation. Meanwhile, across town on the north slope of False Creek, there's the downhill ski competition.
Let go of the brake. Don't hit my car.
Let go of the brake.
Let go of the brake.
Let go of the brake. What? I'm from Alberta. You're from Alberta.
Back in Burnaby, it's time to clean up at the rink. About 24 contestants took part. Some people couldn't be happier with the results.
Got a big pile up here on green gel. I'm going down.
Others couldn't be unhappier, especially with the lack of refereeing.
The guy was talking to somebody that was supposed to stop me, but he didn't get a chance. I went right by him because I was in a hurry. I was late for work.
2.5 hours after it all began, City Works crews finally closed the hills. They say it wasn't their fault.
The salters can't get here to free it because the traffic's backing up the salters.
We thought we'd ask the man who failed to predict it would snow, someone who told us it would be clear overnight. There's Reimer. Let's get him.
No.
Come on, Reimer, don't try and snow us. Anyone can predict rain, but snow is a different matter. What do you have to say for yourself, Reimer?
Look, I'm sorry. I didn't know what was going to happen. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I had enough. I don't want to talk.
Through closed door and clenched teeth, Phil says there will be no snow tomorrow. Sure, Phil. We apologize to those who suffered through fender benders, but may this serve as a message to all. Practice, practice, practice before you take to the ice. Eric Rankin, CBC News.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Johanna is off tonight, so Kuljit Kaila has our snowy, wet, wintry forecast. Kuljit, a cold afternoon, chaotic commuting. What happens next?
There was a lot of talk of snow, and it finally arrived today, and in some parts earlier this morning. It's all because of a low-pressure system, one of a couple that are coming our way across the south coast, bringing with it some Arctic air, so a cold front as well. Temperatures dropped. It's the perfect formula for snow, and there's going to be quite a bit of it into the week as well. We'll get a bit of a break on midweek. By Friday, we're getting another low-pressure system coming that might bring some more snow as we head into the weekend. Temperatures across tomorrow for Prince George, snow and very cold, -16 there for Dees Lake, -21, -12 in Williams Lake, light snow there, light snow in Kelowna, -11 in Cranbrook, also some snow mixed with rain there as well. Here's what we can expect this week across the lower mainland, up to 25 centimeters of snow at higher elevations by tomorrow morning in a 24-hour period. Lots of wind tomorrow, up to 70 kilometers an hour. That might make for some icy conditions, and there is fear of hydro going out as well with some branches falling. And on Thursday, overnight lows are going to get very cold, -4, and by Friday, a 70% risk of some more snow coming our way. Taking a look at the 7-day forecast, as I mentioned, a bit of a break on Thursday with some sunshine. Snow likely to return on Friday with a 40% chance for Saturday and Sunday. Monday, we get back to sunny conditions, but still overnight lows, -4 and -3 for the early start of next week. So it's going to continue to be cold. Dan?
Okay, thank you, Kuljit. That is your late news for Tuesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. Good night, stay safe,